Welcome back. Well, your market news now. Asian markets were mixed on Friday as the China-US trade talks wrapped up with little progress while the dollar held up ahead of a key speech by the head of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. The Australian dollar also managing to pare losses while stocks inched up after the governing Liberal Party, that is, elected a new business-friendly Prime Minister, ending a week of political uncertainty. Tokyo's Nikkei gained 1% on its way to 22,601 points. The Hang Seng dropping off 0.4%, 27,671. The Shanghai Composite rising marginally to close at 2,729 points. Wall Street's major indices fell on Thursday as trade-sensitive stocks were hit by a new round of tariffs in the trade dispute between the United States and China. The Dow Jones Industrial falling 0.3% to sit at 25,657. The S&P 500 losing almost 0.2% to 2,857 rather. The Nasdaq Composite dropping 0.1 to 7,878. Well, there seems to be some green market movement across the board. Again, it seems like the whole week has been green. 0.5% to the good for the JSE All Share, around 58,000 points, 500 there as well. A green tinge as well for the Rand, recovering somewhat. We'll unpack exactly what has moved that. There has been some earnings news and some big news out of Naspers. So we'll tell you exactly what that is in just a moment. But for now, let's unpack the rest of the local and European markets. Everything from economic data right through to earnings results having come out this week. It's been an absolutely busy one, and we'll unpack exactly what has happened now. Warwick Lucas from Galileo Capital joins me now. Warwick, thank you so much for the time. I suppose it becomes a very interesting one when you take a look at how the earnings picture in South Africa looks at present, but we are half a percent to the good, and this week has been a very good one considering Naspers was hurt last week.
Yeah, I think, look, to some degree, a weaker rand has also put a bit of a floor under the market as well. So, yeah, all in all, a generally decent time on the markets, albeit those results coming out are really showing a consumer who's in a spot of trouble.
Yeah, especially those retailers, the likes of Massmart, Woolworths, and Checkers as well. Around 14.20 odd against the US dollar as the rand movement. We certainly don't know where it sits, where it goes. Maybe the band is around 14.15 to around 14.40 or so. But what seems to be moving it now? I mean, surely the Trump tweet is perhaps buried in some of the numbers, but can't be that important anymore.
That certainly wouldn't be all of it. Look, I mean, that was certainly a comment that had some scope to be messy. I mean, I guess it was, at the end of the day, negative marketing for SA, but I think on the whole, informed investors in SA will have been following the discussion for some time, so I wouldn't have expected a huge impact. But I think the key issue really is, as far as the dollar goes, I mean, we can see that generally other currencies strong across the board there. I think some moderate anticipation there of a weakening of Trump politically, which I think is relatively naive. I mean, sure, there's it's certainly a setback for him, but I think it also raises the issue, well, how will trade discussions going forward? Will China, for example, look at this and say, well, let's game this now by trying to kick the can out, draw these discussions out? And that's not necessarily so positive. I think we do want to see a fairly swift resolution before real damage is done. And in any case, I think part of the discussion, because trade and idea protection is intellectual property is so important here, these getting drawn out is not a positive thing at all necessarily.
And now it's being done by lower level officials in the meeting that they just had. Surely there was no resolution to come out of that either.
Well, not likely. I mean, hopefully they were laying out the terms for the next smoke-filled room that might create something. So let's hope that's the direction.
Yeah. In terms of earnings news as well, today we saw a little bit come out as well, a little bit earlier this morning. What has been your key focus as well from this morning?
All right, so I think we saw some relatively weak results there out of Distill. I mean, certainly alcohol is a kind of ticket item that you would expect to be quite robust or quite defensive in a weak economy. Okay, so spirits and wines are not as defensive as, for example, the likes of beers, but still, we would have hoped for better. So clear sign there once again that the consumer's struggling there.
Yeah. And they did manage to raise revenue though, but headline earnings was the one that seemed to have been in the doldrums though.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, actually passing the margin, passing that sale through to the margin is still very much a struggle.
Yeah. At the same time, you had Naspers. They had their AGM, and the chairman, Koos Becker, former CEO as well, saying that they're looking at perhaps reducing the influence they have on the JSE. They're too big for the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and may look to unpack the stock a little bit more. How do you think they could do that?
Well, clearly their biggest investment is in Tencent, but I mean, the rest of the group is still clearly gigantic. I do think that they would need to look at a second listing on a very large market. I saw Hong Kong punted around once upon a time, and that's not a bad suggestion in terms of time zone. I mean, clearly London and New York are other alternatives as well. But I mean, for a stock of that sheer size, I guess some alternative listings are almost certainly called for.
The market is certainly is viewing it in some positive light, almost 2% up at the back of that news when it came out that they're looking to perhaps unbundle the stock a little bit more. Do you think that that'll help the stock a whole lot more as well? I mean, it hasn't reached the highs of 4,100 odd, its highest point, but could it head there now that it's going to be, unpacked a little bit?
Look, I think shareholders would take cheer from the sense that their concerns, which have been ventilated for quite some time, are getting acknowledged and being looked at. Whether it actually turns into real value redistribution is another story, but I think it is definitely positive for the stock.
Warwick Lucas, appreciate your time, but thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend as well. Warwick Lucas from Galileo Capital. That is your business news for now. More news right after this. Do stay tuned.